Number 1. Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp is the quintessential symbol of Western justice, known as the stoic lawman who single-handedly tamed the chaotic town of Tombstone, Arizona. His fame is built on the legendary gunfight at the OK Corral, an event that's become a cornerstone of American folklore. This image, cemented by Hollywood portrayals, paints him as an incorruptible figure who brought order to a wild land. But the truth is, Earp's life was a far cry from the movie version. Before he was a lawman, he was a lifelong gambler, a saloon owner, a brothel keeper, and even a gold miner. He had a long history of run-ins with the law, including an arrest for horse theft and a few arrests for running a house of ill repute. He was even fired from his job on the Wichita police force after getting into a fistfight with a political opponent. The gunfight at the OK Corral wasn't a noble act of justice, but the violent climax of a personal feud between the Earp brothers and a group of cowboys over political and economic tensions in Tombstone. Following the death and maiming of his own brothers, Earp went on what he called the Earp Vendetta Ride, killing those he held responsible, a personal act of vengeance rather than a duty to the law. His legend only truly took off in 1931, when a flattering biography was published during the Great Depression. At a time when people needed a hero, Earp was turned into a folk figure who showed people how to take control of their own destiny. This romanticized version of his life conveniently ignored the real man, an opportunist with a volatile temper who was deeply connected to the very criminal underworld he was meant to police. 2. Billy the Kid. William H. Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid, is often remembered as a young, charismatic Robin Hood. The legend says he was a sympathetic underdog who fought against corrupt elites and was a brave leader for justice against an unjust system. The reality, however, tells a different story. Born an orphan in New York City, he was a skilled gambler and thief who became a murderer after killing a man in a barroom brawl. Billy the Kid was a major figure in the Lincoln County War, which was not a fight for justice, but a ruthless business conflict between two competing factions vying for control over the lucrative dry goods trade. Billy and his group, the Regulators, took the law into their own hands, gunning down a sheriff and other lawmen in the streets. He was later convicted of murdering Sheriff Brady, and his escape from jail only cemented his reputation as a cop killer when he killed 2 deputies. The Robin Hood image is a complete reinterpretation of his violent role in a capitalist war. His legend was shaped by sympathetic accounts, including one from New Mexico's first governor, which helped create the idea of him as a folk hero. This romanticized image, where he's seen as both a tough little thug and a sentimental hero, highlights a greater societal confusion about rebellion, especially when it can be framed as a fight against an unjust system. 3. Jesse James. Jesse James is the quintessential social bandit. The stories say that he and his gang robbed banks and trains to strike a blow against greedy corporations and give to the poor. The legend portrays him as a defiant farmer driven to a life of crime by injustices inflicted upon his family and other Southern sympathizers after the Civil War. The truth is far more sinister. Jesse and his brother Frank were not just farmers. They were ruthless Confederate guerrillas. They took part in horrific acts, including the Centralia Massacre, where they killed and horribly disfigured more than 100 Union soldiers who had surrendered. Their criminal career was a continuation of this violence after the war, and they robbed banks specifically targeting Republican-owned businesses as a form of political vengeance. The Robin Hood narrative is a complete fabrication. There's absolutely no evidence that they shared their stolen loot with the poor. In reality, the James Gang's crimes terrorized innocent people and crippled economic growth in Missouri. His legend was largely created by a pro-Confederate newspaper editor, John Newman Edwards, who used his paper to praise James as a Robin Hood figure and push a political agenda. This propaganda was so effective, it helped lead to the rise of former Confederates in Missouri politics. If you're finding this look at the true history of these Wild West legends, do us a favor and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on more stories about the real frontier. We love hearing what folks have to say, so leave a comment and let us know what you think. 4. Buffalo Bill Cody. William F. Buffalo Bill Cody is the quintessential frontiersman. The legend says he was a skilled scout and buffalo hunter who embodied the rugged American West and shared its authentic life with millions through his Wild West show. His legend is that of a man who lived the adventure and brought civilization and progress to the frontier. The truth, however, is that Cody was, first and foremost, a showman and a self-promoter. His persona was a mixture of all the popular frontier heroes. His famous Pony Express rides were mostly exaggerated, and his show was a commercialized parody of the West. It featured both authentic performers and outright fakes, like sharpshooter Annie Oakley, who was from Ohio and had never even been to the West before joining the show. As a scout, Cody killed a Cheyenne chief named Yellow Hair, and he later used his scalp as a prop to advertise his show. The Wild West show's reenactments, especially of battles with Native Americans, portrayed them as savage aggressors, which reinforced damaging stereotypes and helped justify their extermination. Buffalo Bill's most lasting act was his ability to replace a messy, complex history with a simple, entertaining spectacle. His show became the template for how pop culture would forever portray the West. 5. Wild Bill Hickok. James Butler. Wild Bill Hickok is remembered as the cool, masterful gunfighter who brought law and order to lawless towns like Abilene, Kansas. The legend says he was a dead shot who engaged in legendary duels and was a brave, solitary lawman. Even his death, shot in the back while playing poker, only added to his mythic status. But contemporary accounts paint a very different picture. They described him as a drunken, swaggering fellow who was by nature a ruffian and enjoyed frightening people when he was on a spree. His most famous deed, the McCandless Massacre, was not a single-handed shootout. He, along with 2 other men, killed unarmed men during a dispute over a land payment and a romantic rivalry. He was acquitted, but only because his accomplices were the only witnesses allowed to testify. His law enforcement career was marked by brutality and a short fuse. In Hays City, Kansas, his methods were seen as less than restrained, and he killed 2 men in just 5 weeks. This cure was deemed worse than the disease by many citizens, leading to his dismissal after only 3 months on the job. His fame was a product of sensationalism, thanks to a journalist who published his outlandish and often fabricated tales, instantly turning him into a legend. This shows how the line between a hero and a villain was often determined by who was telling the story. 6. Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane is a romanticized symbol of the fearless female frontierswoman. The legend says she was a gun-toting, horse-riding scout who fought Indians and lived a life of adventure and independence. The truth of Martha Jane Canary, as she was born, is one of deep struggle and hardship. After losing her parents, she was left to care for her siblings and lived a life of poverty. She worked a variety of menial jobs, was known for her heavy drinking, and historical evidence suggests she was a camp follower for military units and likely a woman of the night. Many of her most iconic tales, such as her time as a scout for General Custer and her heroic rescue of a captain, were outright lies that she told herself. A more historically documented side of her character was her genuine generosity and selfless courage. For example, she nursed victims of a smallpox epidemic in Deadwood without taking any precautions. This genuine act of courage often gets overshadowed by her more dramatic but fabricated tales. Her legend was a product of her own exaggerations and a public fascination with her unwomanly and socially aberrant acts. Her adoption of a masculine stature and dress made her a compelling subject for dime novels, which, in turn, fueled her fame. 7. John Wesley Hardin. John Wesley Hardin is celebrated in folklore as an honorable gunfighter who never killed a man who didn't need killing. His story is that of a vigilante and a product of the tumultuous times following the Civil War. But Hardin's heroic image is an outright fabrication. His violent career started at the young age of 14, and his actions were driven by a deep-seated animosity toward Union soldiers and formerly enslaved people. He was a cold-blooded killer with a vicious temper who even killed a man for snoring. While he claimed to have killed as many as 42 men, modern historians can only verify about 20 of his murders. He was notorious for exaggerating or fabricating stories about his life, often claiming to have killed in self-defense when his victims were unprovoked killings. The entire heroic persona of John Wesley Hardin is built on his posthumously published autobiography, which historians have noted is full of outright lies. The fact that his self-serving autobiography became the primary source for his legend shows how a man can completely rewrite his own history and how that myth can persist for well over a century. By framing his crimes as a struggle against the injustices of the Reconstruction era, his legend provides a sanitized moral justification for what was, in reality, a pattern of sociopathic behavior. Well, partner, if you enjoyed seeing which heroes were really villains, do us a favor and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell. We love hearing what folks have to say, so leave a comment and let us know which of these figures' stories was the most surprising to you.